It's about history. It's about preservation. It's about sense of place here on Eastern Long Island. With Esperanza Leon, I'm Irwin Levy, and this is Our Hamptons. Esperanza.
Irwin.
So, it wasn't that long ago. It was really right around Thanksgiving when we released an article, an episode all about the bars, watering holes, drinking hot spots of Eastern Long Island. And we really didn't speak of this one because we knew that this one was a story unto itself. Would you say that's a fair statement?
It is a very fair and yes, it encapsulates that. Yeah. It's going to be, let's say it's going to be, it may be difficult, but I think we can do it, that we can cover the topic in one little segment.
I am
but it's meaty.
It is me.
Sorry.
Okay. All right. We're just gonna let the air go dead for a second about that. But yes, it is a meaty topic. I couldn't agree with Esperanza Leon more. And what we're talking about is, of course, Club Swamp in Wainscott. This has a really interesting history. I'm going to do this in sort of a backwards kind of way, Esperanza, by saying we currently know this site as of really now, really 2022. It became the Wainscott Green, the Rick Del Mastro Memorial Park.
Yes.
But it was purchased, the property, in 2018, $2.1 million, town of East Hampton, CPF purchase.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Friends of Georgica Pond had a little involved in this.
They gave like $300,000, I think.
Right. Yeah. I think they were really involved in this purchase also. But that's the property, and now it is really open space, right? Visible from Montauk Highway.
No, it is. It becomes sort of a bookend, because now with this little park, and then we have the other one at the eastern side of Wainscott, as you are leaving Wainscott and proceeding to the village of East Hampton,
right,
where there was another restaurant that now is a park, open space. Yeah,
that exactly. Yep. And we also, there was even to continue this open space dialogue. I think that's what you're talking about. You're talking about the former Sapore de Mar.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there are a couple of, which is really wonderful. But the swamp was in its day, and we're going to go through the timeline of this, but it was historically, and this not just a gay friendly night spot. This was a gay bar, nightclub, whatever you want to call it.
It was establishment. Yeah,
completely. And this is something I did not know this part of the story. And I'm going to give, this is an article I got. We called from the East Hampton Star. Taylor Vesey wrote it in August of 2018. But the area in Wainscott was notable for historically having been the home to a series of gay-friendly night spots dating back, but dating back to the late 1940s, including a dance hall and restaurant called Out of This World, which according to Taylor here, catered to the Broadway theater crowd. Now, this is near where the Cozy Cabins, which still exist, are.
Right.
And
which are on the south side.
There, that's correct. And then there was a little further east on Montauk Highway. Do you remember the Attic?
Well, yeah. Actually, yeah, it's interesting. That's what I was just trying to recall with my mother, and I do recall the Attic, because I think my parents, when we first moved here, tried to go to, just going out to dinner, or going out for dinner and dancing kind of thing, and they went to the swamp, and they were turned away very nicely, because apparently there was a show going on that the people at the swamp said, you may make the performers feel uncomfortable.
Okay.
the straight couple in the room.
Right.
And so I think they also tried the attic, but that was also the wrong place. I think that was a night of like big misses.
Oh boy, that I would have boy, that's
my poor naive parents.
I would, boy, I'd love to get the Blanca storyline on that. A
Right.
recollection of that night. That would be
I mean, my mom was kind of like, yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't have felt uncomfortable. It would have been fine.
Well, I mean, it's actually, yeah, wow, I actually have to thank Blanca for the segue then. So, I mean, I think that's really as good a place to start as any, look to just, and we'll get into it because this place has had an interesting history. I mean, when you think about how it went from the swamp, and then there was a couple of series of restaurants there, which we'll touch on. But then there was a point of time where someone wanted to put a car wash there.
Right.
I mean, going from, you want to talk about going from the swamp to the car wash. That one really got me. But I guess there was a public outcry that we don't want a car wash there. So
definitely not. I mean, there I think was 2 attempts for the car wash, and I think that would have been the reason for the Friends of Georgica Pond to get involved, by the way, because water quality is essential. We're like the sort of watershed here in Wainscott.
Yes. But so the swamp apparently opened around 1977, and it was owned by a guy, Bill Higgins, former college football player out of Chicago. So we're getting a lot. In addition to the East Hampton Star, we also want to credit this an article from the New York Times, which was really happened right around the time the Club Swamp closed, which was really around, I think, early 2001. But so it opened in 77. And now this is to your point of when your mom and dad attempted to go here. Bill Higgins virtually barred women from the club. And the door policy at the Annex, now that's something we should really touch on. There was both. Now, this was on the same property in a sense, right, Esperanza? We had the swamp and the Annex.
The Annex was the restaurant, right? And the swamp was the club, the nightclub.
Was the club. But both of them really were even the restaurant also, it was really for, it was really for gay men.
Male, yes.
Predominantly. And
which my understanding was that the attic was where the women went.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Wow, this story gets even more interesting, but I mean, but really, it really does speak to also how, Long Island, which is a place that sort of, especially when compared to New York City, has had a more conservative kind of history. It just shows you how really out on Eastern Long Island, it was definitely a little bit more bohemian than the more suburban Up Island seemed to have been, just to really support an environment like this. But
yeah, it's interesting. You would think just the opposite, right? That the closer to the urban, to the urban metropolis you would be less straight-laced or something like that.
You would really think. But so there are a couple of other cast of characters in here. Now, we also have to bring in Stephen Gaines, wrote great book Philistines at the Hedgerow, all about really the history, social history of this area. And he, is a gay male, was a frequent visitor, guest, whatever you want, patron of all of these places. And he made a quote in this article how the story of this place is sort of the story of how people's tastes and values have changed. And I think that's really like an interesting sort of thing. Now, Bill Higgins wanted this to be really, as Stephen Gaines described him, he was a real old style gay man. Stephen Gaines said this in 2001. I don't know if these kind of terms would be really spoken of in 2022, 23, but anyway, that's what he said then. But I love this. He thought having women around ruined things. And now at the time, and I'm gonna.
Gee, I never knew they could be a misogynist.
Could you really? I mean, I like these. This was really like it was like those old Little Rascals episodes. The He-Man Woman Haters Club. Like Bill Higgins did not want women in these clubs, but at the time, now we're going back 25 years, because these women that I'm mentioning, the glamorous Marissa Berenson and Lauren Hutton. These were actresses, supermodels, whatever in their day. Both of them, I must say, Esperanza, are now pushing 80.
Yeah.
So we're going back, but they were frequented this club, and they were also disco loving women. We also should mention this was also paralleled a little bit the time of Studio 54,
Mm-hmm.
In New York. So you had a lot of this going on. And there was some really good quotes in here from Bob Colacello, who was a writer. He was like a crony of Andy Warhol, and that whole scene. And he spoke about this, and he also most Saturday nights went to the club during its prime in the 70s and 80s, and he sweated to the beat with Bianca Jagger, Terrence McAnally, Ross Bleckner. It epitomized the sort of innocent decadence that doesn't exist anymore.
Innocent decadence. I like that.
I like that too. It's like one of those. It's almost like you're saying, yeah, I mean, really wasn't so innocent, but we're going to call
well,
it
that's
innocent.
what I'm trying to get a picture of what that actually is. But
yeah,
yes, but I get it. It's I like the idea also that unlike Studio 54 and other clubs, this was really kind of a dive, wasn't it? I mean, it was totally unpretentious, totally, just very low key and rustic, could we say? I don't know.
Well, how about that's a great question, and it's a great point, and we're going to bring up exactly what it looked like during its next incarnation when I discuss the renovation a little bit later in this episode. But to answer your question directly, how about let's again quote Andy Warhol crony Bob Colacello, who said, "Frankly, it was a dump. The music." And that was the way he put it. And he writes this: the music was awful, and the ventilation was even worse.
Oh, well, yeah.
And he describes this: weekend nights in the summer, the parking lot, was filled with cars, entwined bodies, and the throb of dance music until 4 a.m. That's sort of what went down here. And this is even better. I mean, like, you want to talk about this part really got me. Stephen Gaines now being quoted, after the dancing, breakfast, which lasted from 4 a.m. until 7 a.m. Who are these people that are out at these hours? I fall asleep. I barely make 10 o'clock, 10:30.
Well, Irwin, clearly you just haven't participated in the Hamptons nightlife.
No, I
actually have a feeling like this doesn't happen a lot anymore, but maybe I just got old. But I have to say, I have watched the sunrise many a time.
Wow.
On a night out. Yep.
Wow. Damn. That may be a podcast episode for another day.
I don't think so.
But
I would never.
Admittedly, it may get away from our mission here. Although I would like to hear those stories privately, and I didn't say that really. Anyway, but I mean, could you imagine after this night of partying, breakfast from 4 to 7, and it often attracted 150 people. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That is now. And I also love this part during the early 1980s, just talking about this. Bill Higgins and his business partner was a famous chef out here. I remember this name, Brent Newsom.
Newsom, yeah.
He's a big time chef here.
He was a very well known catering business as well, and unfortunately, died quite recently, actually.
Yeah, I seem to recall that, but I mean, he was, I think he was a Della Femina in the day, and amongst other places. I mean, very, very, really well-known chef. But during the early 1980s, they kept crowds coming by bringing in these live acts, including, I mean, this one. How about Cissy Houston bringing along her 15-year-old daughter, Whitney? I mean, Whitney Houston at 15 years old. Talk about what did we talk about? Your parents not being allowed there, but
turned away, right?
But a 15-year-old Whitney Houston, apparently that was okay.
Well, she was the performance.
I guess she was exactly. And Nathan Lane opening for Barbara Cook. So, there was all of this kind of thing. going down over here. So it really, and if our Hamptons Esperanza is about sense of place and, evocative of a time,
Mm.
it was a moment in time, you
Oh,
know.
certainly. Yeah. No,
My,
definitely. And
my,
I mean, what, 3 decades?
yeah. Yeah. I mean, 25, I mean, really 70s, 80s, closed in the early 2000s. And Julian Schnabel is also mentioned in this article. Now, he was married at that time to Jacqueline Schnabel, and this was Julian Schnabel. This was really his peak years as a painter, and he
Mhm.
also mentioned how the sense. I like this. This I don't. Well, let me rephrase that. It's just. It's not that I like it as much as it's an interesting comment. The sense that women weren't wanted was sort of the appeal of the place. Now, this is Julian Schnabel. This is a straight male, but apparently liked the energy of not having women in the place. I don't know. But late at night during the 1980s, Jacqueline, his wife, often shimmied into, in with some sort of slinky dress, picked up the artist Rene Ricard and danced at the swamp till dawn, and discussing how we were all tired of the glamour, the pretenses of the Studio 54. Money and beauty couldn't get you into that place, and that was
Mm.
great.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that's what a weird, crazy story. Crazy story.
I
But
mean, I went dancing at the swamp,
so
it's
yeah, now now that you opened the door, I actually did want to ask you this now because I know you now. Now apparently, I know it's funny. Your parents were major partiers, having been at the
Oh yeah, right.
being at the Sea Spray Inn and everything else. But so now you actually went. Now you've been to the swamp. You went as whenever you were. This is I guess in
Late
during
90s.
late
Yeah.
90s. So that was sort of it wasn't in its heyday when you
Not
went.
in its heyday. No, but it was like the one place that was close, and I thought it was like a fun place to go dancing, and not that many places to go dancing out here, much less now.
Right, exactly. So you went there, and was in other words, was it at the time you were going? Now this was the 90s, and we're going to touch on the 90s in a minute, like sort of the later years of this place. So was it more open to a heterosexual crowd at this point,
I
or did
didn't
you or did you
even I
you
didn't
didn't
even question or look at that.
e-
I had lived in Toronto for a few years, and I
right?
would always like that was the best nightlife, was going to the after hours bar, and a lot of them were, the gay bars. And
Right. Okay.
it was like a no-brainer to me to go to something like that.
But unlike when your parents went there, they didn't say, "Excuse me, you have to go." I mean, no,
No, no, it was a
they were
mixed
welcome.
crowd. Yeah.
Oh, okay,
That I
interesting.
remember.
Okay, interesting. Now,
Or
so
or maybe they just, started letting women in. I don't well, Bill Higgins was long gone, so
So speaking of Bill Higgins, now to continue on with his little part of the storyline, and we're getting now towards the end of the era of the swamp, but and we're going to get into what it ultimately became. But he apparently had a penchant for dressing up as Carmen Miranda and Baby Jane, and he also. Reading this story, actually built himself a contemporary home within walking distance of the club, which is, by the way, now owned by Stephen Gaines.
yeah,
Um,
I was wondering about that because I
yeah,
knew that that Mr. Gaines lives in Wainscott, so I
he
wondered if that was his. Yeah.
exactly, and he had a greenhouse here with a hot tub, and the regulars from throughout the 80s would come by, and they would jump off the roof into the swimming pool. And this is
Oh
what was
dear.
going on here. I mean, talk about I he was sort of a trendsetter in a lot of ways, but also sort of sounds like the neighbor from hell,
Yeah,
if
right.
you
I
if you're
wonder.
living next door to him. But talking about Stephen Gaines, who admittedly, and he's mentioning in this article how he was sentimental for those days of what he called naive abandon.
Hmm.
Bought the house from Bill Higgins after Bill Higgins died. Bill Higgins died of AIDS in 1990, and he kept the tub and heard many times over the years the shocking stories of what went on in this house. But the AIDS epidemic, apparently by the mid 80s, took its toll, according to this New York Times article, on the swamp and on
Yeah.
some of the other smaller gay clubs in the Hamptons. The Attic shut down in 1985. And to your point, how you were going to this place at into the 90s after Bill Higgins' death. The chef Brent Newsom liberalize the swamp store
There
policy
you
to
go. Yeah.
actually admit more women and straight couples. But, and I guess this is the most telling line here, Esperanza, and I guess you even sense this from what you just alluded to, much of the renegade spirit was sort of gone.
Yeah.
And
No, and you could even kind of feel that, there were nights that were, yeah, like the dance floor was empty. Yeah, it's true.
so,
Sort of the soul was gone.
yeah, I mean, complete. I
Hmm.
mean, and remember, when you think about it, I mean, this goes beyond the swamp. First of all, and again, we can't minimize this was like a little neighborhood, a little enclave between the attic and between the place Taylor mentioned in her article that went back to the 40s. This was a gathering place. I mean, maybe this was like the gay community's bar hopping neighborhood.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
probably went from one to the other. So
And I would say even like, make the point of it being sort of a safe space, like where
yes,
people could just gather and not feel looked at, judged, whatever it was. It was like a place for them to be. That's it.
I apparently I would think so. And so around 1995, um, Brent Newsom ultimately sold the club to a syndicate of buyers from Long Island, and it stayed open, but barely. Brent Newsom already gone, so the food was not the same kind of quality. The crowds thinned out. I mean, the whole vibe at this point in the 90s was just, the place was sort of looking, I'll be kind, rough around the edges. It was
Mm.
getting shoddy and everything else. And but if we fast forward, um, a little bit, um, sort of right around, I guess, um, now we're going into the early years when it was purchased by two people, Scott Gray, a Goldman Sachs investment banker, and Scott Storbo, who did PR for Saatchi and Saatchi. Um, they reopened it and renamed it. Now we're going into this is early 2001, I guess, mid 2001, and renamed it. And you would remember this, I guess. I
Hmm.
remember it, the
Hmm.
Star Room,
Hmm.
and was there, and they got a great chef, Kevin Penner from Della Femina, to do it, to work there. But and they also opened a spot called it was SWA, but pronounced Sway.
Yeah,
So
it always irritated me, that name.
yeah, well, that's such an affect in a sense, also.
It was ridiculous.
Yeah, right. So like, but they had the restaurant, and they had the nightclub, and and they will, they absolutely admitted, and they stated it. They weren't much interested in the swamp's torrid past.
Mm.
They were trying to really almost sanitize these establishments. And no pun intended, when they did the renovation, there's a part in the story here. It said it took 9 coats of white paint just to cover the timbers that were black with smoke and grime and everything else. So you
Yeah,
could
I'm sure that
imagine.
place had never gotten a deep clean, but
No,
yeah.
I mean, because I guess that was like Murph's, that was part of the appeal.
Yeah, but
The
talk
sort of,
about whitewashing the place. I mean, it was really, it became very boring.
yeah. The white the 9 coats of white paint, Esperanza, are almost a metaphor
Exactly.
for the
No,
way
completely. Yeah,
it's as if it's almost as if they painted away the memories and the
totally.
spirit of what made this place what it was.
Hmm.
But long and the short of it, um, they really couldn't really make a go of it, even though after 11 o'clock, listen to this one, the dining tables in the Star Room, if you wanted to stay there, there was a $400 charge. And we're going back 20 years now. There was a $4,000 charge to
Yeah,
hold on to
400.
your tables. And, again, Sway resembled a lot of the clubs and the lounges that were in the area of this time.
Hmm.
I recognize all of these names. I don't think any of them are still here. Conscience
None.
Point,
Yeah.
Jet East, Tsunami. They're all, they came and went.
Yeah.
To your point, something you've lamented on more than one episode of Our Hamptons. it was more fun here in the 40s dancing at
No
Jungle Pete's.
kidding. Yes.
Right. Right. I mean, there's
It's
I mean,
true.
yeah. I mean, all you even it's interesting. You even go back to this era, just again 20 years ago, you had all they're all gone.
Yeah, yeah, but it's the affectation that really is like the downfall of these places.
I guess, or just
Well, it's that whole, it's like upscale, upscale, upscale,
yeah,
and there's no real substance to it.
no, yeah, I mean the Hamptonization, or if we want to use a term we throw around in a different way, too many amenities.
Too
What
many
are they what are
yeah.
they giving me? What are they giving me for the $400 to keep the table?
Right, right.
I mean, really, when you think about it. So, needless to say, uh, Swa, that's SWAY. Swa.
Sorry, it's just that I still read that and see
I
that, and
really, I got to
I
admit, I really want to say sway. All right, I do want to call this place sway,
but it
but
is sway.
it is
It
according
is sway.
phonetically, it is, but
Oh,
swa,
painful.
yeah,
Painful.
swa and the Star Room. Despite I mean, they were well funded, but really, it just couldn't hang on, and
That's where money isn't everything
mon-
rings true.
Right, right. Exactly right. So, and that sort of led us up to the fact that, and now you live and lived in Wainscott during a lot of this time. I mean, those buildings were just abandoned for years. I mean, just
Right.
right.
Well, yeah. So what? Star Room closed in 2008,
Yeah,
right? 2008 it closed. And so for like 10 years, those buildings just lay
right.
derelict.
And
Yeah, because the car wash proposals were like in 2012, like mid 2000s, 2012, 2015.
and the car wash actually, in a sense, did everyone a favor because it pushed the
Yes,
envelope a little bit.
exactly.
It
Yeah.
got the Friends of Georgica Pond involved, and it got the town to, use CPF money to purchase this,
Right,
and
right.
and
And
convert it.
interestingly, the town did purchase it, but apparently there was really no immediate plan. I mean, they were like, "Oh, we'll just convert it, to woodland, and
Right.
have just a little wood pet." But I guess the community was asking for something more
Yeah.
usable.
Exactly. And I mean, I think it's look, I think it's wonderful. And I also there was in September of 2021, there was a Pride event there, with Tom House's organization, which I think is fantastic.
Yep, and it
And
happened again this year.
yeah, and what I really especially liked about this is it does pay tribute to the history and the legacy left behind. The buildings may be no longer, but what that place represented, still, that energy is still there in some ways. If nothing else, the Pride organization is keeping that alive,
Yeah, yeah.
which I think is fantastic, because that's it's part of the, like other things we've spoken of on Air Hamptons, like the Bonnickers, like the Fishermen,
Right. It's
yeah,
part of the fabric of the,
it
yep.
really is part of the fabric of what makes this community so special. That in provincial Long Island, as early as the late 1940s, this community here existed.
Yeah, yeah. And I will say the Wainscott Green Rick Del Mastro Park, who, was named in honor of Rick Del Mastro, who was very supportive of this whole endeavor of it becoming the Wainscott Green as well. Hamptons Pride with Tom House, his intention is that there be a sort of a monument in honor of Club Swamp.
I think
And yeah,
yeah,
and so far they've staked it out, the area where the dance floor was.
right.
And so they are going to, at least right now for the moment, are going to mark those four corners with like little, buried stones or monuments that will be there to mark that spot.
I think
So
that's
yeah,
fantastic.
and the yearly event, the tea, it has a great energy. People are it's still in their memories.
I completely true. I
Yeah.
actually saw a picture on the internet of Tom holding an old sign from Club Swamp.
Exactly.
I would
Yeah.
love to see that sign even
Yes.
incorporated there, because really this
Yeah, because
really,
Tom bartended there for
right,
several years, right? Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
right. So he probably took the sign home, I mean, or whatever, but that's it. But it's a fantastic sign, and I mean this place was, it was iconic. Yeah, and just it spoke of such a, again, evocative of a time, of a place. It's really a terrific story.
Yeah.
Yet another terrific story, and of all that makes up the fabric of this place. And I'm so happy that that legacy will at least somehow, some way, still be on site.
It will be. Yes.
And on that note, Esperanza, I think that's as good a place as any to wrap up. Going back in time.
So you can get out your dance shoes and go dancing tonight until 4 a.m.
Where am I supposed to do that? The last I checked, does the clubhouse have dancing?
I guess so. Yeah,
Maybe
they
have,
do.
but
But
I mean,
I
but
don't know. It's
I-
just
I-
also, oh, that was a big yawn.
It was that was, but again, I keep just looking. Swa, Conscience Point, Jetty, Tsunami, all of these, and there have been others. I mean, we could go on. There are others we're leaving out, but that specific element is really gone. I mean, it's just doesn't exist.
Yeah, it's just gotten too popular out here.
It's so popular, no one wants to come anymore, right? Yogi
I
Berra
wish.
once said something like that.
Don't we wish that were the case?
It's wow, like so popular, no one wants to go there anymore. That's what Yogi said, something like that. But, well, Esperanza, that was fun going to Club Swamp and
Yes.
reliving those days. And wow, just but it there is something nice that the place has been preserved and it's open space, but again, that energy still remains. So thanks for this walk down that path of what was. And I'll be thinking about you and your parents actually being turned away from the door. That story, might have been Bill Higgins that turned them away.
I would not doubt it. Yep.
Exactly. All right, Esperanza. Thanks so much.
Irwin. Thank you. Until next time.
Until next time. Thanks so much for joining us. New episodes of Our Hamptons are released every other Tuesday. Find them wherever you get your podcasts.